Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of NBAV. That's NBAVE. We are NBA Avenue for sports talk and casual conversation about your favorite sport. And we are your NBA venue for a great time every time. And let's do a little recap of last night and yesterday's NBA action on a weekend that was really dominated by 4 football games, what some consider to be the best football week of the year, where you have 4 games between 8 different teams, the top 8 teams in the league in the NFL. Very exciting times there, but we have something more exciting to talk about, and that's the NBA games that we saw yesterday. We're coming to you on January 22nd, 2024. We're already most of the way finished through January. It feels like 2024 just started, but already nearly 1/12 down. And we're going to talk about the games from January 21st. We got started off with the Nets playing the Clippers. And this was a phenomenal game because you had the Brooklyn Nets with the game in hand up by like 12 points, up by double digits. They have the game in hand. There's only 4 or 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and the Nets just go on a barrage scoring. I'm sorry, the Clippers go on a barrage scoring 22 points straight to win the game. This was a masterclass by Brooklyn for how to tank an NBA game. You play well, you play competitive, you have the lead, but wait a second, our team's not supposed to go anywhere this year. We need a high draft pick. Bring out the tank commanders, and boom, James Harden drops a three. Paul George drops a three. Kawhi Leonard drops a couple of threes. A couple of buckets in transition, a three from Norman Powell, and boom, 22 straight points. And the Brooklyn Nets get run out of Los Angeles. The Clippers remain hot. This is why I always say that when you're dealing with bad NBA teams, just tune in for the final few minutes of the game because it doesn't really matter how close the game is up to that point. In this case, it didn't even matter that the Brooklyn Nets had a double-digit lead with only a couple of minutes to go. What was important is how they collapsed in the final few minutes of the game. The final few minutes of a regular season game are the real, important, impactful minutes that tell you a lot about the NBA team. And that gets further expounded upon in the playoffs when the entire game is like that. In the regular season, only the final few minutes are really that level of importance. And in the playoffs, it gets extended to the entire game being of that level of importance. So the Nets doing what the Nets are doing this year, the Clippers remaining hot, remaining one of the best teams in the NBA over the last 20 games or so. Then we have the Nuggets beating the Washington Wizards in a game that we're not going to discuss because who really cares about Washington? Then we have the Heat losing by 18 points to the Orlando Magic. Orlando getting Franz Wagner back, continuing their great season where they're one of the top 5-6 teams in the Eastern Conference. And the Miami Heat continuing to do what we talk about nearly every podcast, which is absolutely bewilder their fans, bewilder the analysts around the league, and bewilder everyone in their organization and everyone watching because you can't take a look at this Miami team and understand them. They win games they should lose, they lose games that they should win, and when the playoffs come around, they're somehow going to be in the conference finals, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way the Miami Heat are. Why? I don't know. Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches in the league. Come playoff time, why can't they do better in the regular season? Why can't they be more consistently good throughout the whole year? Not sure. That's just the way they are. Celtics beating the Rockets. Celtics maintaining their 3.5-game lead on top of everyone else in the Eastern Conference. Then we have the Suns defending home court against the Pacers. 117-110. The Suns are very good at home in the final few minutes. It's something that I've noticed about the Phoenix Suns over the last several years. When it comes to the final few minutes, they're very hard to beat on their home court. They proved it against the Pacers last night. And then you have the Lakers beating the Trailblazers by 24 points. The Lakers getting a much, much needed victory, and that's what you need to do when you see a team like the Trailblazers or the Pistons or the Wizards or the Charlotte Hornets on your schedule or the Spurs. You got to take advantage. You got to drop a 20-point plus victory, have an easy night's sleep, and try to now parlay that into a win streak. Now, last podcast we did something which was a little bit interesting. We went through a Bleacher Report article where Bleacher Report is trying to cite what should each NBA team do at the trade deadline. Where are the needs? And we went through each one and we really saw how silly that article was. Now we're going to take the spotlight and we're going to shine it onto The Athletic. The Athletic, probably considered a higher caliber, more of a paid service. Let's see if The Athletic can top the article that we looked at the other day from Bleacher Report. And we're going to once again go through all 30 NBA teams and what The Athletic thinks each team should do at the trade deadline. They start off with the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics, another option at wing. Realistically, Celtics don't need much. They're healthy, but they have Sam Hauser and question marks at the wing position. Brad Stevens could be looking for more. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit of something there. They actually did more analysis than Bleacher Report did. They said who their backup wing was. They cited someone's name, and they said, this is an area where Boston could improve. Okay, let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets to figure out their future. They're in the play-in tournament right now. They don't have their own picks. And considering that they don't have their own picks, they can't even sit guys out and try to lose games. That's a little interesting because what happened last night with Brooklyn blowing the double-digit lead in the final few minutes was a case where it really seems like they don't want to win the game. That's what a tanking team would do. But in the case of Brooklyn, maybe they're just so dysfunctional, so middle of the road, so unclear about their future, and they're just a bad basketball team that's why they lost the game. That's why they blew the lead. Because they don't even have their own draft pick. It doesn't benefit the Brooklyn Nets to lose all these games in the regular season. They may as well try their hearts out, try to win. Not to mention, they have several players who should be on the trade block right now. They have Royce O'Neal, Spencer Dinwiddie. They have other players as well. And these guys should be playing their best so that someone on a different team will put in a trade and get them out of Brooklyn. And maybe they can play meaningful basketball into the later parts of the season. Maybe they can be playing for hopes of an NBA title. Isn't that the goal of any NBA player? But Brooklyn doesn't seem to care about that. The article continues. They have 4 players: Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Royce O'Neal. 3 players: Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Royce O'Neal set to become free agents, and the Nets need to figure out their stuff before looking outwards. I don't really think that the Nets have anything to figure out. I think the Nets have to trade their players. Anyone who's an expiring contract, Royce O'Neal, Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, you should be trading all 3 of those players, no matter what. Because you already have Mikal Bridges locked up more of a long-term deal, and you already have Cam Johnson locked up in more of a long-term deal. So if you aren't going anywhere this year, then you need to figure out how to get the best pieces for next season. You have 3 players who are pretty desirable or should be pretty desirable by other teams with real playoff and NBA championship aspirations. What the Athletic should have written in this article was trade all players who are expiring. And that should be a no-brainer for the Brooklyn Nets. Trade all players who are expiring. If you want to get back a young piece who's good, fantastic. That's icing on the cake. But set yourself up for next year. And that starts with trading all your expiring contracts. Moving on to the New York Knicks, they're saying another ball handler. They could use someone who could run the offense during the 12 minutes when Jalen Brunson rests. As we've been through before, the Knicks already think they have that guy. The Knicks think that they have Miles McBride, a player who can run the court for 12 minutes, and they might be right. It's possible. We need to see a little bit more from him. He's shown that he could do it at the G League level, and he's shown in small spurts that he could also do it at the NBA level. But we just need to see a little bit more from him. The problem with the Knicks from here on out is that the Knicks have started to get the injury bug real bad. They already lost Mitchell Robinson. They lost Jericho Sims early on in the season. Jalen Brunson missed a couple of games, and there you got to see what it would look like for this team if they had to have extended lapses where Jalen Brunson wasn't on the court, and how bad that would be for the Knicks. And then you have Isaiah Hartenstein, the shining star, the emerging star for this team this season, rolling his ankle. And if Isaiah Hartenstein is going to miss time now, in addition to all the players I just mentioned, or if he's just not as effective rebounding the basketball as he's been up to this point, then that's really going to bode poorly for the Knicks in the next 10, 20 games or so. And that really makes a big difference, because for the Knicks, if they can be a 4 or 5 seed and play Cleveland in round 1 of the playoffs, they can beat Cleveland again. They have Cleveland's number, as they showed last year during the playoffs. And when you put Jalen Brunson head-to-head in a playoff series against Donovan Mitchell, I would take Jalen Brunson for the victory every single time. But if the Knicks go lower down and they have to face off in round 1 against Boston, that's not going to go well for them. They can't realistically expect to win that series. If they have to face Philadelphia, can they compete? Sure. But would I give them the upper hand? I'm not so sure. If they had to face Milwaukee, I know that the Knicks are going to put up a good defensive effort, but they're not going to beat Milwaukee in a 7-game playoff series. So it's very important that the Knicks get to the 4th or 5th seed and they remain competitive with Cleveland, who is on a 6-game win streak right now, hottest team in the league. Philadelphia 76ers, getting back to our Athletic NBA article. The 76ers need a two-way wing. They could use more size in the backcourt because DeAnthony Melton is only 6'3", and a two-way player who can give them more pop and defense. That's pretty understandable for the Sixers. When you have a player like Joel Embiid, who's so good as a defensive player at the center position, you would love to be able to have a wing who can really compete on the defensive end. And then you would have somebody of every size to play great defense. You would have Tyrese Maxey bringing that intensity at the point guard position on defense, and then you would have Joel Embiid at the center, and then you want to just solidify that with one more wing who could really up the defensive intensity. That would be a great idea for the Sixers, and I actually like that analysis. They credit the writer here, Mike Vorkunov. Credit to Mike Vorkunov from The Athletic, bringing us some good content. Moving on to the Toronto Raptors. They're focusing on Scotty Barnes' timeline, depth up front, and wings to replace Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa. The Raptors should be finding players who can fit next to the 22-year-old Scotty Barnes and Quickly and Barrett. That was kind of a very general bunch of information. They should try to improve, find players who will work around the players they already have. Not much insight there. I wish that if I was writing an article, I would try to be more specific and say, and make it clear so that after the reader finishes reading that section, they know what I wrote. They know what I meant, and they could repeat it back to someone else. After reading what Eric Corrine wrote about the Toronto Raptors, I can't really go and take anything out from there. They're in a state of flux, and they should try to improve. That's not really much in the advice column. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls. All eyes on DeMar DeRozan, the impending free agent. If the goal is to go in a different direction and rebuild, now's the time to act. Doing nothing is unacceptable. It's a little interesting that someone's going to mention the Chicago Bulls, and the only thing they're going to talk about is DeMar DeRozan. I understand that DeMar DeRozan is at the forefront of some people's minds because at the end of this season, he's a free agent. So you would want to trade him and get what you can. But it's a little interesting to leave out Zach LaVine from the discussion. When Zach LaVine is a player who missed a bunch of time over the last few weeks, and during his absence, the Bulls thrived under the leadership of Kobe White. And if you can get the leadership from Kobe White, then why do you need Zach LaVine? So it's a little interesting to see somebody write a whole paragraph about the Chicago Bulls and what they should do with the trade deadline and completely leave LaVine's name off the table. You would have to think that was just an oversight, and through the process of having to write about all 30 teams and what they should do at the trade deadline, that they just forgot to mention Zach LaVine. Because that's almost unconscionable. How can you forget Zach LaVine? He's been on the headline of any Chicago Bulls fan. The first thing they would say right now, if they had to pick what should happen at the deadline, would be trade Zach LaVine, get his contract off of our hands. At the end of this season, you'd like to get something for DeMar DeRozan, but at the end of this season, he's gone. That cap space is going to be free. But the $50 million per year that they're paying Zach LaVine is still going to be on the books for next season, and possibly more after that. I'd have to check up his contract, which I'm not going to do right now, but has to be an oversight there from The Athletic. Moving to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cavs' biggest need are stitches and gauze. Injuries have limited their starting lineup. I get what they're going for here. When you're talking about 30 teams in one article, you want to try to be a bit creative and a bit original. So it's a little cutesy to try and say, oh, the Cavaliers need more Band-Aids to stitch up their team and keep them on the court so that they can play together. But that's not what an NBA fan is looking to hear when they're reading this article, and that's not what the staff of an NBA team wants to see when they're reading about what their team should do. If they want to see to gauge what do the media have to say about their team. Nobody really wants to hear that because that's something that's not really in your control. You can just try to do your best to surround your team with good players, get some top talent, get ancillary pieces around them, get shooting, get defense. Nobody can really control health. You hope and pray that your team is healthy. So just to say that their biggest need is health, that's really no insight there from The Athletic. Detroit Pistons. Everyone's favorite garbage heap out there in Detroit. They need NBA rotation players. Pistons' reliance on developing youth hasn't helped them much in the win column. Monty Williams seems committed to a 10-man rotation, so Detroit needs to go out and improve around the margins. Very hard to understand what that even means. If I was writing an article about the Detroit Pistons and what they have to do at the trade deadline, I would say very simply, you have 2 point guards commanding one position. You have Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Considering that neither one of them is a classic 2-guard, one of these players has to go elsewhere for the sake of balancing out the team and putting them in position to move forward. At the same time, they have a couple of veterans like Alec Burks, and they have Bogdanovich, and they have got to figure out where to send those players to get something back for them. There's no point in having them on this team. So that's what I would say. I would say you got to trade you have the worst record in the NBA. You have to trade anybody who any team will value and give you anything in return for, get some more young pieces, continue building, get some more draft picks, continue building, and figure out which point guard you want to lead your team in the future. Is it Ivy or is it Cunningham? The Indiana Pacers. The Athletic says that they are looking for a tough power forward. Well, they just got his name is slipping my mind. They just got Pascal Siakam in the trade with Toronto. So they just got their power forward. So they should really be set. And they're really just at this point, it's do you want to trade Buddy Hield? I'm not sure you really do. I guess his contract is expiring. Maybe you do want to trade him for a player who can be around for a little longer, or you could just let his contract expire and you'll be freeing up more space because you'll have Pascal Siakam's expiring contract, you'll have Buddy Hield's expiring contract, and then you can really go make a play at any free agent you want. So I can understand if Indiana was just to wait out this season at this point. That would be okay by me. The Milwaukee Bucks are looking for perimeter defense. With Damian Lillard, the defensive situation has become more dire, and they haven't found any answers halfway through the season. They are going to need to find a way to defend better, or they'll have to outscore teams every single night. Fair enough. Milwaukee Bucks, I know it's not rocket science, but what can you really expect a sports article to say outside of the Bucks have to improve their defense? Sometimes it's just that simple. You can't expect Giannis to take the team, put them on his back every single night, and drop 45 points and hope to get a couple of threes from Damian Lillard and win the game. You have to have a defensive scheme where players are rotating, players are there's good energy on the defensive end. Damian Lillard can't just get cooked every night and be in a shootout. It's not feasible, and it's not going to be feasible when they're playing the Boston Celtics. They need more defense. So very understandable from the Athletic on that one. The Atlanta Hawks, they need a wing defender. They can't win because they give up more points than they score. Trae Young means they need another wing. DeJounte Murray isn't the answer, and neither is DeAndre Hunter or Sadiq Bey. They need a true lockdown guy. Again, it's another example where it's understandable. They're saying they want a lockdown defender. You need really a Pascal Siakam would have been a pretty good fit to have Pascal playing with Trae Young. That would have been a good fit for Atlanta. Atlanta just trying to figure out what can they get in exchange for DeJounte Murray. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets need a new front office. Then they go on to talk about Michael Jordan, new ownership, a new front office. Yeah, this is really a case where I would just skip the Charlotte Hornets. I would either say trade LaMelo Ball, stop paying him $50 million plus a year, trade whoever you can trade, get new assets, retool in the draft. That's probably what I would say for the Charlotte Hornets. So I get what they're trying to do. They're saying the Charlotte Hornets haven't been good for so long that you really just need to trade the whole front office. And if you trade the front office, now maybe you'll get started on the right track. So I can understand that. You're saying take out the brain trust, put in a new brain, and maybe the Hornets will have a brighter future one day. The Miami Heat, they need backcourt insurance. They've only had Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero in the lineup together 8 times this season. That's pretty unbelievable. We're over 40 games in, and there's only been 8 games the whole year where Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, and Bam Adebayo have played together. So they've played maybe a quarter of their games, having all 3 of those guys together. They're 3 top players. So yeah, they need more insurance for those guys, 100%. They've been heavily reliant on the rookie Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Kyle Lowry has really been a shell of his former self. Even when Kyle Lowry was on the championship team in Toronto, he wasn't really that guy. He wasn't really the guy who could do it without absolutely Herculean performances from Fred VanVleet and Kawhi Leonard. Those things were absolutely necessary. And then when you added good games from Lowry on top of that, and with Pascal Siakam, yeah, that was enough to help them win the championship. But Kyle Lowry has never really been a guy, aside from when he was on an incredible team, he wasn't a guy who could be paired with another all-star, DeMar DeRozan, and really do damage in the Eastern Conference. They were playoff disappointments every season until Kawhi Leonard got there. And now Kyle Lowry is not even half the player he used to be. So they're in desperate need of some new players. They lost Gabe Vincent. They lost Max Strus. They really need some depth because is it reliable to say that you can expect Jimmy Butler to do what he did last playoffs, where he single-handedly elevated that team to championship status in one of the greatest playoff performances we've ever seen in history? Are you willing to bet on that happening again? The Orlando Magic need floor spacing. They're in the bottom of the league at three-point percentage. They're essentially saying that the biggest hole in the Magic's best player, which is Paolo Banchero, is that he's not a great three-point shooter, but he's going to become a better three-point shooter. What I would really say the Magic need are more help at the point guard position, relying on Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, and then relying on center Goga Bitadze. They really are lacking in every single player on their team except for three guys: Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Wendell Carter. And then maybe you could say it's also nice to have Mo Wagner on the bench. Those are four players who I would say are keepers. And then the rest of the team really not adding too much. They're okay. Some of the guys are NBA talent, but they're not players who you would expect to be true contributors on one of the top 8 teams in the league, let's say. So it's about keeping the team together, keeping the 4 players together who are good, and just trying to build towards the future. Who else can you add to Paolo Banchero as he organically improves his game over the first few seasons of his career? The Washington Wizards, we're not going to bother looking at that one. We have the Denver Nuggets, one of the most complete teams, but they could use some. This is just me going off on my own now. I got bored of the Bleacher Report article. I got bored of the NBA Athletic article. Yeah, the Denver Nuggets. What do they need? They need a better backup center because DeAndre Jordan can't be relied upon, and they need a better backup point guard because Reggie Jackson can't be relied upon. There you go. It's that simple. The Minnesota Timberwolves. What do they need? They really need their top player, the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards. They need him to play better in close games down the stretch. They're winning a lot of these games at the end, and this is really amplified, had a spotlight shown on it through their loss to the Thunder a couple of nights ago, where the Minnesota Timberwolves had the lead. They were up by 8 to 10 points with a couple minutes to go, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took over the game. He managed the tempo. He was comfortable with the ball in his hands at the end of every possession. He could create space with his behind-the-back dribble. He could get to the cuff. He could get to the hoop with the right hand. He could pull up, and he was very reliable. And you had the steadying presence of Dort hitting threes late. And they took the game. They just absolutely snatched the game away from the Timberwolves. And now they're only a game back from the Timberwolves in the Western Conference. The Thunder are going to have a better record by the time the season's over. With half the season to go, there's no doubt in my mind the Thunder are going to outplay the Timberwolves for the rest of the year because they have the better player right now in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Anthony Edwards struggles when the game tightens up in the final few minutes, and that's really where the Minnesota Timberwolves need to improve. It's not through going out and getting more players. It's through improving the execution at the end of close ball games. And what I hate hearing from Anthony Edwards, a guy who I really like, but when he says after losing a game that they really had in the bag, if he just plays better, is, well, how can we be expected to win when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is getting the foul calls that he gets at the end of the game? That's not why Minnesota lost to the Thunder. They lost to the Thunder because you couldn't get a good shot off in the final 2 minutes of the game because you were turning the ball over in the final 2 minutes of the game. And you were making the team depend on Karl Anthony Towns in the final 2 minutes when he's shown that that's not the player who he is. Maybe if you can play make a little bit better and be smarter with the basketball, you can find Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert with an open dunk at the basket, Or maybe you can create a better shot for yourself, or for Nikhil Alexander Walker, or for Mike Conley, or for Slow-Mo. That's why you lost the game. They lost the game because of you. They didn't lose the game because of the refs. They didn't lose the game because the refs were giving Shea Gilgeous-Alexander calls that he didn't deserve. You could have won that game, and you need to take the responsibility for your team. The Oklahoma City Thunder. They're really a team that I wouldn't do anything. I would not do anything at all. I would leave it. The team is playing so well. They're second in the West. They could be the top seed in the West by the end of the season. Just leave the team as is. I know that they have tons and tons and tons of pieces, but just leave the team as is. Let's see how far this team can go, because you're building something really special, and it would just be a shame to see players get shipped out and to see that chemistry get ruined for no reason, just because you wanted to accelerate the timeline and take a big swing. The Portland Trailblazers, it doesn't really matter what you're going to do with this team. I would just send out Malcolm Brogdon to a team who could use him. I would send out Jeremy Grant to a team who could use him and try to retool for the future. Very simple. The Utah Jazz have to be very smart, because they're also building something that's looking pretty nice. But they have to make a tough decision, which is Colin Sexton, as well as he's played this year, is he going to be the future point guard of this team? Because he's played well enough that he's going to command a lot of money one day. And if you're not willing to pay him that money, he's going to go get it from someone else. So it's time that you decided, is he going to be the point guard of the future? Or at least it's got to be a question on your mind. Are you going to keep Colin Sexton as the point guard of the future and trade maybe Kelly Olynyk, maybe trade a Jordan Clarkson? Or do you want to trade a Colin Sexton when his value is at its absolute peak? There are teams in the league right now who want a backup point guard like Sexton, or maybe even just another guy to keep on the floor in the starting unit to play at the 1 or the 2, considering he gives you great defense. The Golden State Warriors, really one of the most bewildering teams this season. It's very unsure what to do. I would trade Kuminga, attach him to... You know what? I'm not going to try and work my way through this one. The Warriors are in a deep pile of crap, and I can't begin to think how they're going to work their way out of this. With players who have been on the team, who have won 4 championships, they have Clay, Curry, and Draymond. They're just in a tough decision where they're in between eras right now. Their players aren't what they used to be, even Steph Curry. And it's just too tough of a situation where they're basically picking their poison, and their poison is, we're going to ride the ship until it sinks. And I understand that, because you have a fan base who loves Curry and who loves Thompson and who loves Draymond Green, despite everything Draymond Green has done. Despite the finals against Cleveland, where he got suspended for Game 5 and possibly cost them the finals. When you have 4 championships under your belt, the fans love you. And they're going to let this ship sink with all of their players on it, and they're probably going to be in dire straits for the next 4 or 5 years. And that's okay. If you want someone to trade Kuminga, trade Chris Paul. Your fans aren't attached to those players. Those are players you can trade. You can trade Andrew Wiggins if there's a possibility to do so. The LA Clippers, they're just going for a little bit more depth. The Los Angeles Lakers, there's really no great move for the Lakers here. They're probably just going to have to come to grips with the fact that they don't have enough. Same thing as the Warriors. They just don't have enough. They're in a similar position. They'll be a play-in team, and we'll see if LeBron can work his magic and be the LeBron of old and take the Cleveland Cavaliers to another finals in the East like he used to do. Now they're going to have to apply that to the Lakers. Can they win a play-in game or two and somehow upset a Thunder or a Minnesota Timberwolves or Denver Nuggets team in round one, and can he do the impossible? The Phoenix Suns, they have no resources to go do anything. They're just sitting there waiting for the buyout market. Is there one more player we can get and add to the bench rotation? And then we just pray to the gods and say, keep our big three healthy. Please keep our big three healthy, because Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, who knows when one of them might topple over and be done for the year. The Sacramento Kings, what are they going to do here? They have Malik Monk coming up as a free agent at the end of the year. He's perhaps the second most important player on this team. I would say that he is, more than Domantas Sabonis. And every team in the league is going to want Malik Monk as a free agent next year. The Kings don't look like the same team as last year. They're having problems. They're good when the game is crazy, but when the other team is able to slow it down and run more half-court sets, they struggle. And they're not the team that they were when they played Golden State last year. And they need to figure out why. The Dallas Mavericks have a great record, despite the fact that they're incomplete. They have their top dog. They have Luka Doncic. They have Kyrie Irving. And then they have the man who's hotter than an oven right now, and Tim Hardaway Jr. They have Blake Lively. They have some pieces, but they need to improve the rest of their pieces. The Houston Rockets, they're a team that is more about building the culture right now than it is building a championship team. They've had a tremendous turnaround, which I knew was going to happen when they brought in Fred VanVleet. And Jabari Smith is looking better and better every single game. And Şengün is looking like a force out there. They're building something special here. And they should just keep doing that. This is not a trade deadline to do really anything. They don't need to worry. They're building the culture. Ime Udoka is doing a fantastic job, and they just got to keep on going. The Memphis Grizzlies, they have the lost season. There's nothing for them to do. They're going to lose a lot of games, and they're gonna be high up in the draft and hope that they can figure out how to keep John Morant on the court, have him play with his same crazy style, but tone it down a little bit. Stay healthy. They'll get back Brandon Clark, hopefully, Steven Adams, and with Jaren Jackson Jr. and a couple of their younger players, G.G. Jackson maybe will help contribute next year. The San Antonio Spurs, they've been linked to perhaps bringing DeJounte Murray back. I'd actually be interested in that. Let's bring DeJounte Murray back, pair him at the point, and let's see if they can run off, a 5, 6, 7 game win streak in this NBA season. That would be absolutely delightful. To see Victor Wembanyama on a team that's winning ball games with a player like DeJounte Murray, who loves Popovich, who loves San Antonio, a player who plays well in San Antonio, and a player who would be the best teammate that Victor Wembanyama has ever played with. That would be really exciting. Send out anybody. It doesn't really matter. You have Wembanyama. Bring in a player like DeJounte Murray. Give the Spurs what they want, and let's see what he can do with the two of them together. It'll provide a lot of insight into the future, into what Wemby can do, into who else you're going to need around him. Is DeJounte Murray enough? Let's see. Let's try it out. That's what I would say. Moving into the NBA games that we're going to have happening tonight, we have the Magic against the hottest team in the NBA. We have the Cleveland Cavaliers coming up in just 2 hours and change. You have to bet on the Cavs right now. Even in Orlando, they're on a heater. Is it going to end tonight? I don't think so. We're going Cavs over the Magic. You have the Spurs going into Philadelphia, where the 76ers are pretty much unbeatable this season. 76ers going to beat the Spurs tonight. You have the Bucks, who are going to destroy the Pistons in Detroit. You have the Raptors, who are going to beat the Grizzlies tonight. Raptors are going to beat the Grizzlies because that's what the Raptors are. They're a team that who are not really good, but they think they're better than they are. And when you think that you're a good team, you have to beat the real teams on the bottom of the league in order to keep up that image that you're really a good team when they're not. So the Raptors are going to win this game against the Grizzlies at home. The Minnesota Timberwolves going against the Hornets in a game that they're definitely going to win. You cannot expect the Hornets to put up much of a fight there. The Celtics are going to Dallas to play the Mavericks. Assuming that all of the stars are in this one, this should be a great game. Mavericks are playing well, except for the return of Luka Doncic, where they put up a bit of a dud. Let's see if they can get back on track against the tough best team in the league, the Celtics. The Bulls are going to Phoenix, trying to play the Suns, who are winners of 5 games in a row. Second hottest team in the league right now, the Phoenix Suns, and the Suns are real tough to beat on their home court. Suns are going to win this one against the Bulls. And then we have the Hawks going to Sacramento. And this should be a good one because Sacramento has been real up and down this year. Atlanta's been real up and down this year. And whether this game is high octane back and forth with high efficiency, it'll be a great game. And if it turns into a sloppy game, which the Hawks can make it, which the Kings can make it, it'll be a great game either way. So looking forward to 8 games of NBA action tonight on January 22nd. On NBA Ave, we are out.